I didn't know what love looked like. I didn't trust it. I didn't recognize it. But somehow I knew how to love others. And what I've learned is that when I see you, hear you, respect you, value you, all for being you, that's love.
Welcome to Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. My name is Clayton Platt, and I'll be your host for this podcast journey. And for many people, practicing mindfulness has very little to do with sitting on a cushion, lighting incense, or even focusing on their breath. Just paying attention to what they're doing at any moment. And doing this intentionally can create that same magic. Our time together is intended to share how mindfulness plays out in everyday life for our guests. And before we begin, here's a word from our sponsor, Meditation for Leadership. We all feel it. The pressure to keep up, to perform, to push through. But lasting success doesn't come from speeding up. It comes from slowing down, leaning in, and creating the space to lead from within. That space is where we shift from autopilot to intention, building mindful habits that strengthen focus and calm. It's where we stay connected to our values and purpose, choosing to respond instead of react. It's where we unlock our potential to positively shape our own lives and empower others to grow and thrive. That's the work of Meditation for Leadership. If you're ready to create the space for sustainable success, visit meditationforleadership.org. I want to start today with a question that Ray Arata has been sitting with for most of his adult life. It's not a complicated question, not an abstract one. Just this. What would it look like if men actually led from the heart? Not as a slogan, not as a corporate initiative, but as a daily lived, embodied practice. I'm Clayton Platt, and this is Magic in the Moment, Mindfulness in Real Time. And my guest today is Ray Arata, founder of the Better Man Movement, author of Showing Up, and one of the most thoughtful voices that I know on what healthy masculinity actually looks like in practice. Ray spent over 25 years and more than 20,000 hours working with men inside some of the world's largest organizations and helping them move from the armor of performance and self-protection into something more honest, more connected, and frankly, more effective. His framework, heart-based leadership, rests on 6 principles: emotional literacy, vulnerability, authenticity, accountability, inclusivity, and love. And that last one, love, is the one that I want to spend most of our time on today, because in my experience, it's the one people more often than not just gloss over. It's the one that makes executives shift in their chairs, and it's the one that Ray believes is the whole point. Now, Ray and I, we also share a history that goes back farther than the Better Man movement. We both came through George Kinder's 7 Stages of Money Maturity work, a program that uses money as a mirror for the deeper self and that asks each of us in different ways what we were actually living for. And that shared information is part of what makes this conversation feel a lot less like an interview and a lot more like 2 people continuing something they started a long time ago. Ray, it is a profound pleasure to have you here, and welcome to Magic in the Moment.
Thanks so much, Clayton. It's my pleasure to be here as well.
I want to give a special shout out to your resilience, because people may notice if they're watching on YouTube that you have a sling over there. And I know you just went through a total shoulder replacement. So, man, you're showing us what it means to show up in many different ways.
Not just that, but in addition to the shoulder replacement, I had a double knee replacement 3.5 months ago. And hopefully today we may be able to get a chance to talk about the correlation between pain and love, because I've experienced both, and now I have a deeper understanding as to how they relate to each other.
Absolutely. Thank you for setting that up for us, because I definitely want to go there. Let's go back if we could, and we'll go in the old Wayback Machine. And anybody who's a lot younger than us will have no idea what that's referring to. But I want to go back to the days when we were kind of first getting to know each other, and we were doing those George Kinder workshops. And that was like a program that used our relationship as money as a way of surfacing what we were actually living for, as I mentioned earlier. And I think for our listeners who don't know what that work was about, how would you describe what those experiences did for you back in the day, back in the early 2000s?
In order to answer that question, I would have to give a contextual background about the men's work that I had been doing, which had basically opened me up to seeing and understanding how the pained little boy in me was driving the adult bus. So when I had an initiatory weekend with the Mankind Project and got a chance to emotionally mature, it turned on my introspection, and I got interested in healing myself. And so along the way, while I was in the financial services business, I came across a magazine that said Your Money or Your Life, and it was a feature of George Kinder. And more than anything, when I went to quote unquote go get trained, I got life planned. So I basically got put in the chair and basically asked, "What's your life plan, Ray?" And so that more than anything else is what really landed for me. And it was perfect for me because once I was able to acknowledge that plan and love myself enough to commit to it, off I went. It took a
Hmm.
while, but nonetheless.
I'm laughing internally, not at you, but with you, because that whole sense of that life planning certainly changed my own personal trajectory. But that's the subject of another conversation. But yeah, it had profound impact on what I felt I was living for and how I could be dealing with what was most important to me. If I'm not mistaken, and you referred a little bit to this, I think, so would you say it's accurate to say that your wake up call may have come before the George Kinder? That made you start doing some introspection. You went through a painful divorce, a business partner leaving you, and you went through that men's initiation weekend.
Yeah.
Build on that a little bit if you could.
Wake up, man up, step up. So do I think it was a wake up call? Yes. This was my first book that I wrote because we're getting the I don't love you anymore speech at 1 o'clock in the morning and having a business partner leave and go to a rival firm. It was like a 1-2 punch. And so I could either cry in my soup or begrudgingly get interested in what did I have to do with it. And
Mm.
so when I took that path, I was invited to go to the weekend by the manager in the financial services firm I was working at, a very unlikely place for an initiated man to be because it's not the most popular endeavor, especially with men, because men, we don't feel our feelings. We don't talk about our feelings. We're stoic. We don't ask for help. Everything's fine, which is all BS.
If there's anything that we've learned over the course of my life, and especially the last 3-4 decades, it's how do we actually grow and become the best versions of ourselves. And
That's
I think
right.
we're headed in that direction in this conversation. You said at one point that no man in your life had ever modeled emotional literacy for you. And I wonder if you could, what does it mean to grow up without a map? And what happens when a man finally finds one?
So my father, God bless him and may he rest in peace, was a Superior Court judge. In many respects, he did show me what it was like to quote unquote be a man in the responsibility sense. But with respect to emotional literacy, he didn't make sadness okay. He didn't speak about fear. He kept a lot of those feelings to himself, except when he'd have a glass or two of wine and I'd see him emote. I loved those moments. I didn't know why until later on in life. And it was through my own trial by fire that I came to learn about emotional literacy through the Mankind Project. And it's like my mom was a Southern Italian, more masculinized woman, alcoholic, a rager, but she was an intuitive. But the joke was my mom was a witch. So the outgrowth of my mom as this intuitive person and my dad as this cerebral wonder kid as a judge, the outgrowth of those two was this emotive person, me. So I took the best of what they had and I left the rest. And through trial by fire, attending men's weekends, sitting in men's group, I started to learn about myself and therefore others. So and I have the gift of gab, if you couldn't already tell, and I was able to start communicating this to people in a way they understood.
In my perspective, what you were able to bring to the forefront and communicate to people, especially to men, and in a way, indirectly to women, that men who were on this journey were trying to do some work and support them in that. But this kind of led, in many respects, I think, if we could break down the 6 principles of the heart-based leadership, which I think is so incredible. You've already referenced the emotional literacy. And I think we can read between the lines. I'm hearing the aspects of vulnerability and authenticity, but then going those last 3, the accountability, inclusivity, and love. You and I talked about this before, but you've said love is the last and the very most important part. And
that's right.
Why does it come last? And what has to happen before a man is ready to hear it?
So there's no easy, short, soundbite answer for that question, but I'll do my best. I can be soundbitey and say love is the answer, and it is. I could say love makes the world go round, but if I go deeper, and in the context of heart-based leadership, as a father, hell, as a son who didn't get love the way I needed it, I didn't know what love looked like. So I didn't trust it, I didn't recognize it. But somehow I knew how to love others. And what I've learned is that when I see you, hear you, respect you, value you, all for being you, that's love. So when I flipped that around, I wasn't seen, heard, valued, respected for who I was. This is not about throwing my parents under the bus. It's just really, that was the narrative that the child's mind had, right? And so I'm really good at loving others. Many times when I've talked to CEOs and leaders, I'm like, I want to invite you to consider something for a minute. All of your employees, they are pained little children inside adult chassis, and they want nothing more than to be seen, valued, heard, understood, respected for who they are. That's love, baby. So if you somehow can see them for who they are, it's not about letting them off the hook, because I've also learned in all the men's weekends, listening to men who had just gone through, I've heard them say, never have I been in the balance of being held accountable, and I'll use my other hand, and being held. So being held accountable, so there's a strong love and then there's a supportive love. Mm-hmm. And I don't care who the CEO is, man or woman. They've got a partner, they've got kids, they were a kid, they'll know what I'm talking about. And the sooner that they understand this, the better leader that they're going to become, the better father that they're going to become. And part of the reason why this has been absent and people are uncomfortable is because people don't know how to let it in. So it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I want to go deeper into letting it in, because to me, that's really the heart of where this conversation can go. And I was really excited to go there. But I want to take a step back, because what you described about what leaders don't understand in terms of that connection with their employees and all those things you said that the employees need to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, all that, right? Honestly, I'm hearing in the back of my head people that I've worked with who are going, Jesus, that's just so much BS. That's coddling. It's like, my job as a leader, I'm supposed to have a vision and I'm supposed to help us get there. And what I'm thinking is, Ray, what you're telling your leaders is, yeah, you need a vision. That's probably a huge reason why you are where you are. But to get from A to B, you have a team that has been put together to make that happen. But if they don't feel seen, heard, respected, et cetera, that trip is going to be at the very least slower, if at all. And getting them to be motivated and inspired to do the hard work,
Yeah.
they need to feel that connection from you. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. I'll never forget very early on in my men's work process, I was on a weekend and we were setting up on a Friday, waiting for all the participants to come. And the full leader, the head guy, the dad, jumps up on the table and yells at the top of his lungs because it was chaotic. He goes, "I could go into bad, Dad, but I'm not." Because command and control as an authoritative leadership does not work. You're instilling fear in people. Then they're not going to trust you. They're going to back away. They're not going to give you their best. They're not going to know how to ask for love. And your job is not to give them what they need to only do for themselves. But in the grand scheme of things, you have a pair of colored lenses that you can put on: fear or love. And there'll be plenty of subtle instances where seeing someone for who they are, valuing them, respecting them. Now, I could take that a cut deeper and say, can you love somebody enough to give them hard feedback? Absolutely. There's so many ways we can slice what love looks like. So it's not just soft and cushy. It's speaking truth to power.
Yeah.
Love is saying, sorry, I can't. Because if I do, I'm going to get hurt. Or you're going to get hurt. That's why the next book I'm going to write is going to be great.
I know it is. I can't wait for it. So my mind was kind of spinning in a couple different directions as you were talking. And my mindfulness training was saying, okay, stop spinning, be here, hear all those words. And they did. They landed greatly with me. I'm thinking a couple things. I'm thinking from a neuroscience standpoint, as you described, the difference between threat and love. And I'm thinking of all the work that I've done that was talking about threat and reward. And I think we can use reward and love perhaps as synonyms here, but that continuum where love being in my left hand and threat on the far ends of the axes. And if someone is in a total threat state, their limbic system kicks in, it's fight or flight, and they are not hearing anything that you're saying, and they're not able to use their executive powers to implement a strategic plan. You can yell at them from the rooftop and think that authoritative power should be resonant, but it's not. It's like it's putting them in a threat position. And as you said, they're pushing back. The other thing, though, is that you also talked about speaking sort of truth to power. And I'm thinking like one of my favorite expressions from the Bible was speak the truth with love. And that's setting the boundaries. And boundaries are important, right? So we don't necessarily want our relationships to be totally on the standpoint of someone's just like totally relaxed, no stress, completely feeling love. Yes, they should feel loved, but they should also feel, let's say, incentivized and have some urgency sometimes around what they're doing. So it's okay to have that balance. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
And before we get into letting love in, because that is the heart here, right? A lot of what you described in terms of a leader's ability to form those connections, that trust, that foundation, and seeing, hearing, respecting their employees, there's an awareness there, isn't there? There's an awareness of what that person needs, what they're hoping for, what they're expecting, and what supports them. And that awareness is really hard to actually put into reality if you don't have the self-awareness, right?
Right.
And maybe that's our connect here, because in order to truly send those signals of love, you got to feel it internally. If you're really going to believe
it starts with you.
Yeah. So take it away on that.
Yeah. Mindfulness, according to me, is akin to introspection. and being awake and conscious. So my lighthouse of attention, my mindfulness, has me shine the light on what's going on for me. Oh, I'm feeling sadness in my stomach, or shame in my shoulder, or I'm feeling fear. And if I'm not careful, my mind's going to start writing a story about this, which is simply a story and it's not true. So a lot of times I ask my coaching clients, so what's the feeling? And they'll tell me, and I said, what's the story you're tempted to write? That's me assisting them in waking up to what almost was an unconscious narrative. So then I can say to them, what's the story you want to write? Now we're talking mindful. Or put another way, I used to say a lot, a partnership of the head and the heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I'm able to do that with me, I'm able to do that with anybody else.
Yeah. But you have to start with yourself. And that sense of the fear, and I think there's so much power in that. The fear is telling a story, right? And I'm thinking about mind chatter. I'm thinking about the way the ego and our subconscious has those stories, right? And those stories were intended to protect us, right? Yeah. That element of subconscious fear, the whispering in our ear, the mind chatter, that helped us survive, but it's not so helpful right now. And what you're saying is, if you can have some presence, have that sort of metacognition, the ability to say, I'm seeing these conversations going on, and this one, okay, that's my ego saying, you need to watch out, look out for this, be afraid, step away from that dangerous situation. And what you're saying is, okay, that's a story. That's the story fear is telling you. And you can actually create a different story if you listen to your heart.
That's right.
So you've been going down this road to say, look, I can do lots of great things, but before I do great things, and by the way, you already are, but let's say you can do even greater things, right? When you truly allow the love that the universe, that individuals have for you, you're allowing that in. You're letting your tuner, right? I'm thinking of the old days when we didn't have digital tuners, but we had to do the analog, right? It's like you're tuned in.
The whole, I think before we go to letting love in, I need to clarify and speak to letting go.
Okay.
And my own experience of tremendous pain with my knees and my shoulders took me to the brink, to the point where I had no other choice but to let go. But the question becomes, what was it that I needed to let go of? And what I learned in my recent therapy-assisted medicine journey was I needed to let go of a belief, a deeply held, hidden belief, that I didn't deserve to feel good and that I didn't deserve love. Now imagine if those two belief systems are etched in at a very young age. If we don't get love, we die. So we have to create strategies in order to get love. And so for your listeners, you could be the hero, you could be the rescuer, you could be the nice guy, the nice gal, the do-gooder. There's a whole host of strategies that I'm sure your listeners and watchers are familiar with. I also let go is that I don't need to do anything to earn love. That's no small statement, which means I'm already lovable, which means I am love, which means there's nothing for me to do. Now, easier said than done, because that's hasn't been my modus operandi. But now that I've had my journey and I've looked at pain and how pain has taught me humility and how pain has been my guide and how pain is related to love, I now know how I can use love for me. Even when I'm feeling discomfort, I can close my eyes, go into my heart, and radiate love to wherever my pain is. And it creates a shift. Now imagine if I'm a coach and I'm holding somebody, not literally or literally, but I'm coaching them, I'm holding them, and I'm coming from a place of love. I think every single one of my clients would tell you that I love them. I love them. And that's why they keep coming back. And what I'm slowly but surely supporting them in doing is loving themselves. So it was important that I share that.
I think that is incredibly important. And that sense of where you are right now, you are lovable as you are in this moment. Can we become better versions of ourselves? Absolutely. Yes. And we should have, if at all possible, a sense of maybe setting our GPS, our internal GPS, in line with, okay, I'd like to continue to work on myself and become a better version of myself. But at this moment, I'm worthy.
Even in what you said, I'm going to offer you a course correction. To assert or insist or desire to be a better version of yourself, the unspoken assumption is that you're not good enough as you are. And so
Right.
the invitation is to just be fully you.
I hear that. And in many respects, it can be perhaps the way I phrased that, but I'm going to accept that course correction with the love that it was intended. And the key for me is that I think there's a misunderstanding when we focus on self-care, self-love, self-compassion, right? For me, there's a misconception around my mindfulness practice that I'm just going to be content with who I am right now. I am content with that. Yes. But I also want to say that there's nothing inherently wrong with knowing right now that I'm fine just the way I am. And if I never change, that's okay.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if I say, you know what, I can actually, I don't have to, but I can, for example, be a little bit more aware from time to time and maybe catch myself a little earlier before I screw up in a conversation. That's not a bad thing.
No,
It's not, right?
that's about intention.
Yes, fair enough. I
That's
love
about
that. Yeah. And I think that's a really beautiful way to put it. That's about intention. It's not about necessity.
right. Yeah.
Beautiful. So let's go now a little deeper then into this letting love in. Why right now has it become such an important sort of guiding light for you and where you feel it's taking you? Because you mentioned the book, and I can't wait for that. Tell me more about this whole concept of letting love in.
I'm still formulating because I'm still processing from my journey, but just to personalize this, my life depends on it. I was in so much pain and resisting pain, and I didn't understand my relationship to pain, when all along what the answer was to all that was love. So right now, for the rest of my days, one of my intentions of going into my journey was to make my healing the number one priority in my life, all day, every day, for the rest of my life. That requires me to love me, because if I didn't do that, I'd get worse. I would drive a wedge into my marriage, my kids, everything, and I'd be a miserable SOB. And that's not how I want to live. And I had a shamanic reading some months ago where I was told that in no uncertain terms, what's next for me is to be a healer of the body, mind, heart. And when that was told to me, I've been a healer per se of the mind and the heart, and I would get into the body through presencing people's emotions. But then when I looked at that deeper, I'm like, how can I do that unless I heal my own body? So this right now, as I'm going to shift from it being about me, now I look to the greater world, and I look to the divisiveness. I look to all the pain that so many people are in. And for me, I see plain as day what the answers are. And so letting love in right now is a non-negotiable. The door has been opened. I've got my joy back, and I'm ready to consciously bring it out into the world. Before, it was a strategy. I was coming from a place of, I'm going to love you so I can be loved. I am love. I'm going to love wherever, whomever.
I'm thinking about the dealing with the physical pain. And honestly, we can equate that at the same time with dealing with emotional pain. I think the sense of being able to be with that pain, to acknowledge it and not push it away, not pretend it's not there, not to ignore it, but to actually be present with it, and to be able to love yourself and those parts of you that are suffering.
With love.
And with love, exactly. I haven't gone through exactly the same physical journey you have, but I've had my own things. And there were times when I'd be like, oh, Jesus, I was like, I'm just such a crip, right? And then it's, wait a minute. You wake up in the morning, you're alive, right? Mm-hmm. So your lungs are working, your heart's working. Let's start with some gratitude. And you can actually walk. So let's give some gratitude for your feet and your legs. And maybe there's some pain there, but the fact is that instead of the frustration and the anger and the suffering around that, what I'm hearing from you is that it's, let me send some really strong feelings of caring to those parts of me that hurt. And to me, that is that beautiful parallel between what you're sending internally and what you've said you've been doing for decades externally, sending love to people. And it's authentic, it's real, but the ability to maintain that and have it perhaps land even deeper is when it's people can tell that it's coming from a place where the love is internalized first.
Yeah. Yep.
And that does give you the resilience to get through some of these massive challenges that arise.
That's exactly right.
We've talked about this is what I want to do. Is there a methodology for you in the process of letting love in? So we know that conceptually, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm working on. Is there a process, a methodology that you use to help jumpstart that?
It's a tagline I created that came out of one of my journeys. You ready?
I'm ready.
You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. And it will be revealed. So there's no getting around it. You got to feel to heal. That's the deal. Most people shy away from pain. And I'm saying lean into pain, get curious about it, be willing to feel it. Now, what we haven't talked about at all, which most men and most humans don't know how to do, and that's grieve. So be open to grief. Be open to feeling and experiencing loss. So again, methodology, people are like, what do you mean, that's it? I'm like, yeah. One has to be willing to feel. So talk therapy is not going to get you there. Just won't. Everybody in one way, shape, or form has trauma. Everybody has pain. So you will not get swallowed up by it or consumed by it. So take little bites out of it. Feel the pain. Ask yourself, what do I need to learn here? What's pain teaching me? Can I forgive myself? Can I forgive others? Again, these words that I'm dropping in here are not to be taken lightly. Forgiveness is significant.
Yeah.
And love.
Yeah. I was thinking back, the last silent retreat I went on last year in January, and I've been meditating for 25 years. I've been sitting on cushion for 15 years. And leading up to that retreat, 7-day retreat, I was sitting half an hour, 40 minutes a day, right? And everything was fine. I'd go to the retreat, and the first day, my body is screaming at me. And I wasn't able to be calm. My mind, I have all these thoughts going on. I have these distractions in my head. I actually had this improv session going on in my head to try to distract me, right? In a silent retreat like that, you get a few minutes to talk to the leader. And I talked to the leader and I said, I know around emotional pain that maybe I can be with it and have that as a way to move through it. But this physical pain, I'm just having it. And he asked me, he said, just like you said, he said, can you lean into it? Is it going to kill you? I said, no. Is it going to maim you? No. So can you lean into it? And the exact word that you said, Ray, can you be curious and say, what can I see about this? What's needed here? And I just tried that, and literally things shifted. And I think you'll appreciate this. I started actually sending love to my knees and my hips. I'm going, you guys are great. You've been here for 3 days now. Look at you. And it sounds really goofy.
No, it doesn't.
But it shifted everything, Ray.
Yeah. And so I also did a 7-day silent retreat called Hollow Bones. And one of the first things the instructor said was, sit down, shut up, don't move. And I had to address just what you did, my physical feelings, but more than anything, what was going on in my mind about all this. And good for you to lean into it. There's a saying that we say on the men's weekend, which applies here, is what you resist will persist. Mm-hmm. So the more we avoid pain, the more it's going to exponentially increase. So we might as well go to pain school.
Go to pain school. That is a great concept. Go to pain school and learn. So where does this take you now? We've gone through the heart-based leadership. We've talked about letting love in. And we know, honestly, we've talked about why it's more difficult for men, right? Because there's that sense of you got to, quote unquote, man up. You have to be back in the saddle. But the letting love in practice, to get yourself into that framework, is there a particular technique that you just say, okay, this is the message for me, and this is what I need to do right now?
For me, it's one day at a time. It's being totally present, because I will tell you that the temptation for me with a recent left shoulder replacement and an impending one coming in 3 or 4 months is to say, I'm not going to have my life for the next 8 or 9 months. And I'm calling BS on that. And the only way I can do that is be present in the moment, in the moment, in the moment, in the moment, and just do my best each day. And I have to remind myself of my new reminders. There's nothing I need to do to earn love. I do deserve to feel good. I have a lot to say. And trust. Can I trust myself? Yes. Can I trust God? Yes. Can I let other people love me? Yes. Can I let God love me? Yes. So there's a certain ease, a very new ease for me. I'm agendaless, and it feels great. Yeah.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. And I think that the people who get to work with you and participate with your coaching are blessed, and they will be over time even more blessed as you continue that personal journey of validating your own worth and the fact that you are so deserving of all the good fortune that may come your way, all the love that family, friends, and frankly, your clients, they know you love them. But the fact is that it's always a two-way street. Yeah. If there's authenticity in that, and there clearly is, it comes back in different ways, but there's a real tenderness around that. And the work that you've done to focus the importance of all of these things for men, honestly, the work is clearly not done. There's so much more that needs to be faced. And in many respects, sadly, I think back a decade, And I think there was much more acceptance then than there is in this very moment. And we don't have to get into the reasons why, but I think we have some understanding that there are movements to push away. But I think we can model what you're saying, and we can model being equanimous, right? Being balanced and being resilient, not simply because we're manning up, but because we are understanding when we need to grieve. We're understanding when we need to suffer.
Yeah.
We're not pushing that away. We're being with it. But we're also able to say, in darkness, what's the opposite? What's the other side of darkness? It's light. And do you remember when George Kinder was talking about if you're looking at a mountain, right? Where would you rather be, in the valley, looking up, or on the top of the mountain? And most people would say, oh, I want to be on the top. And he goes, okay, I get that. Where do you go from there?
Exactly.
So understanding that to get into the light, we have to experience the darkness.
That's right.
Like the hero's journey, right? And I think, again, you're manifesting that. And it's so important. So you're going to be working on the new book.
Yeah.
You're going to, first and foremost, you're going to be recovering from the surgery and getting ready for some more surgery. And oh my God, bless your heart for that. Where can people find your work?
With a cautionary note, because it's going to change, rayarata.com is my website. And a lot of the stuff there is about my heart-based leadership and inclusionary leadership. We're going to be changing that a little bit, but that's probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. And specifically
that I recommend
that you've written?
My book.
Yes, your book. And books that you recommend as well.
On Amazon and others, they can get Showing Up, how men can become effective allies in the workplace. And I believe the same for Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up. This is for the man who is at or near a wake-up call, and this is his guidebook.
Perfect.
It's a timeless book. And I'm reading a book by James Hillman right now called The Longing. It's about aging. So I'm aging, and I'm looking at that right now and what that means.
Yeah. We can come back and have another conversation about that, because we're on that journey. I'm a little bit ahead of you, but it's just something that I find really important, to be able to look at this part of life and love it and accept it and be curious about it. So, Ray, thank you. It's been such a joy talking to you today, reconnecting with you. I love you dearly. I'm proud of your work, and I'm sending huge healing vibes your way.
Clayton, thanks so much, brother.
Hey, thanks for listening. I want to give a big shout out to John Gehring of Story Trust Media for his expert editing and wonderful production guidance. I also am deeply grateful for the ongoing support I receive from Meditation for Leadership and their sponsorship. So that's all for now. Until next time, this is Clayton Platt saying, watch for those moments of magic when mindfulness shows up in real time in your life.